Hey everybody, Kyle Goethe here from GoatFilmReviews.com and Kyle and Nick on Film on YouTube. And I am here talking about more films that I love from my past and things I want to introduce to you. So, quick introduction here, I guess, if you guys haven't seen any of the other episodes I've done for this. I'm taking films that either were not well received when they came out, usually lower Rotten Tomatoes scores, films that didn't make back their budget or lost money, and films that maybe got Razzies that I think are worth checking out again. And today, I am here to talk about Dracula. No, not that one. The other one. No, not that one either. The other one. No, the other one. I'm here to talk about Mel Brooks's Dracula Dead and Loving It from 1995. So, pull up a chair, get yourself a glass of something delicious, and let's begin. Hey guys, thanks for joining us again. I'm Kyle Goethe here. Kyle and Nick on Film's not currently running right now with the current crisis going on. We've both taken a step back to work on some other projects, but we also wanted to make sure we had content showing up on the channel as often as we could, keep you guys engaged in the discussion. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity for me, since I'm revisiting a lot of older films, to talk about movies that got low Rotten Tomatoes scores, movies that failed at the box office, movies that got Razzie nominations or wins, but that I still feel have some merit to them. So looking through my past, the films that have inspired and ones that I've greatly enjoyed, and I thought, you know what, this week there is almost no better option than Dracula Dead and Loving It from 1995. It's one of the first PG-13 movies that I knowledgeably rented, which was a big point in my film career. So quick background on the film: it is the last theatrically released Mel Brooks film in which he directed, and it's also the first pairing of him with Leslie Nielsen, the great parody comedic actor, and it's a dissection of Dracula, the mythos, done in a complete spoof film. If you guys know the story of Dracula, which I got to imagine you do at this point, I won't get into all the details of it because it's more fun to just experience it, but great film that just no one seems to love and no one really talks about, but it's one of my personal favorite Mel Brooks films and parody films in general. Really forgotten gem on my part. Quick background on it, though. It did have an 11% on Rotten Tomatoes, meaning that pretty much 1 out of every 9 critics actually liked the film and gave it a positive review, which is pretty low. I think the film also lost about $25 million at the box office. It did not do very well at all. And I think that's a darn shame, because I think it just really works well for me. So today we're going to talk about the 5 reasons I love Dracula Dead and Loving It. And there are plenty more reasons than just 5, but I feel like we should just kind of stick with the parameters of the 5 here. I could go talking about it for a long time. But anyway, let's start with reason number 1 why I love Dracula Dead and Loving It is Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks, for the first and only time appearing on film together. It's one of those things where when you think about certain directors who really specialize in one kind of film, it's odd when you realize that they haven't worked with someone that just so logically would have gone well together. This came up last year with The Irishman, Al Pacino's first film with director Martin Scorsese. It's almost shocking when you think about that fact, and you're like, well, no, they've worked together on something. You look back through the filmography, no, they never did have any interaction until The Irishman, and that just kind of staggers your thought, because these two people are so well known for the kinds of films that they make, and that they've never actually crossed paths is shocking. Same can be true of Dracula Dead and Loving It. Leslie Nielsen appears in the film as the titular Dracula, and for me personally, I know Leslie Nielsen way more for his post-Airplane roles than his more serious work in his earlier career. For some of you who don't know, he was a very serious actor, and I think one of the things that makes his spoof comedy work so well is that he plays everything as straight and dramatic as he can, and then the comedy is mined from that. That's what I think works best from him. Dealing with Mel Brooks, who has done a great job dissecting genres and really like piecing it all together. How these two not work together, it's insane. Mel Brooks appears in the film as Professor Van Helsing, and that's great too, because you have two, again, comedic powerhouse performers as well, who are on opposite ends. You've got your villainous Dracula, your down for good Van Helsing, and their interplay and some of the scenes that they share, trying to have the last word on each other, is brilliant comedy, and I think it works very, very well. Very generic, very juvenile, but that's kind of how two older guys fighting would be. So I think it really works well in the film. I love the scenes that they share together specifically. So that's reason number one. Number two, I love that this film, it could go the very straight and narrow, just making fun of one particular aspect of Dracula. But the way that Mel Brooks actually dissects the novel, he takes elements from the 1930s Dracula, from the Hammer films, from the 1992 film, which had just come out, and he really like picks out bits and pieces of each one of those films to kind of like mine for comedy. It's kind of in the same way where, like, as you watch more versions of the Dracula films, you come to appreciate more about the spoof. In the same way that, like, I had seen Austin Powers back in the 90s before ever watching a James Bond film. And now going back after watching other James Bond films, now that I've seen all of those films, you can appreciate what Austin Powers is really poking fun at a lot more. Same can be true of this. I think I saw Dracula Dead and Loving It. Actually, I saw it before the 30s film. I saw it before the Hammer films. I saw it before the 90s film. I saw it before I read the book. It was actually my first introduction to a film version, I believe, of Dracula, outside of seeing like pictures in a book. So I really enjoyed it in my younger years for that, but I've gone back to it after seeing these different interpretations of the novel and finding myself just taken by how much fun was mined from these different bits and pieces. So that's number two. I think it's really great that he could have just taken the simple route of making like spoof of just one version of it or the novel itself. Whereas you kind of see like with Young Frankenstein does it again to a somewhat lesser extent. Young Frankenstein's actually more kind of like a comedic spoof sequel, lampooning the Son of Frankenstein films from Universal. And it's very focused in the Universal monsters kind of a world. Whereas this one kind of takes it and really dives into each element of it pretty well, which I think is fun and fantastic. So that's the reason number two why I love Dracula Dead and Loving It. Let's talk number three here. Peter MacNicol as Renfield. Peter MacNicol does not get enough love in anything. I think he had done Sophie's Choice. He's known... was that TV show in the late 90s that I'm completely blanking on with Callista Flockhart? I think that was her. I don't know. He recently appeared in like the Battleship movie. He was on a season of 24. Loved his work in Ghostbusters 2. And this is kind of a similar character to the one he plays in Ghostbusters 2, the bumbling side, like minion, if you will. Renfield is in a lot of ways almost like a foil to Dracula because in so many versions of the story, he does cause the downfall of Dracula in some form. He is really like up to the snuff of, trying to be this great minion. And I think there's a lot of comedy gold mined and a lot of spoof mined from Peter MacNicol's great supporting turn as Renfield in this film. Throughout the different versions of Dracula, sometimes Renfield is a small character, sometimes he's a big character, sometimes bits and pieces of Harker are played into that too. So there's a lot to really kind of go around and figure out. Renfield is done surprisingly well in this film as this bumbling idiot who should not be there. From his opening scenes showing up at Carfax, or showing up at the castle to deal with Dracula, and just the way he, again, like plays kind of very straight and stuff too. I love the sequence where he's in bed and he wakes up and Dracula's brides are seducing him and he goes, "My God, what are you doing to the furniture?" I think it's just a great sequence too that's really fun to watch. Because he's just, again, he has no idea really what he is supposed to be doing. He's more concerned with what they're doing to the furniture than the fact that they're trying to seduce him. Elements like when he's in the prison and Dracula goes to see him, but he's upside down, and Renfield goes, "Well, I need to be upside down too." So he climbs up on his hands and tries to like put himself upside down to interact with them more. He's just this bumbling fool, and it works really well. I love Peter MacNicol in this film. He does not get enough credit in any of his roles, very much especially with this one too. So number four, the reason why I love Dracula Dead and Loving It, simply put, is Mel Brooks' adept directing and the way that he shows a lot of love towards the character of Dracula in the spoof form of it. I've spoken on this subject many times on Kyle and Nick on Film, and I think earlier on these Why I Love videos. In order to lampoon or spoof something, you need to love it. You need to actually have some love for the thing that you're making fun of. This is something that Mel Brooks has said before. I think I first heard him say it when he was talking about Spaceballs, how he had a great love for science fiction films and Star Wars, and even he reached out to George Lucas to get his okay to actually make Spaceballs. In order to make fun of something, you do have to show it a level of love. You have to understand it. You have to be able to get into the nitty-gritty of it. That's what separates films that Mel Brooks made, the Zucker brothers made, from films that we get today, more towards recent years with spoof films like the later Scary Movies, or even, I guess, breaking it down, like the Meet the Spartans, disaster movie, date movie, epic movie, all these like really bad, I think Vampires Suck was one of them, where they don't understand the genre, they don't understand the very source material that they're making fun of, and they decide to make a lot of pop culture jokes. Pop culture jokes have a place, but you can see that those films do not age well. I mean, they weren't that good to begin with, but they didn't age well because the pop culture doesn't survive in the same way that the mythos survives. And that's why you get films, you can go back to High Anxiety today, you can go back to Blazing Saddles today, you can go back to Young Frankenstein today, because the mythos survives. That's what I think is so great about his Mel Brooks' directing of Dracula Dead and Loving It, is, again, he loves the character, he loves the story, and that is why he's able to make an adapted version. I'm talking to the point of, like, I didn't even realize that it was supposed to be a comedy when I was a child and I rented it, because I remember I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, and I saw this film for the first time, and I honestly thought it was a horror movie when I checked it out at the video store. I was on kind of, I've always been a horror movie fan, but I was on kind of a horror kick, and I remember renting it from the store thinking it was a horror movie. And I quickly realized that was not the case, but I also wasn't entirely sure. Like when I was supposed to be scared and when I was supposed to be laughing. It plays those tones so very well. Again, coming down to Mel Brooks' great directing for the film. It's not his strongest directing outing, no, but it's still like a master director working with a style of film that he loves to do. So number 4, I love Mel Brooks' love for the mythos. Number 5, just a quick out, one of my favorite scenes in the film, probably my absolute favorite scene in the film. Reason number 5 why I love Dracula Dead and Loving It is the staking scene. Now, slight spoiler alert if you don't know the story of Dracula, but in the film, Lucy, played by Lizette Anthony, is taken and turned into a vampire by the Count. And there's a sequence where Jonathan Harker, played by Steven Weber, has to go in with Mel Brooks' Van Helsing and dispatch the vampire. She's gone back to her crypt and she's there. I love the sequence because Mel Brooks knew what was going to happen. Van Helsing is aware of what's going to happen. He gives Jonathan the stake and he says, "You must pound this stake through her heart." And then he goes and hides behind a beam, because what Jonathan doesn't understand is that when he stakes the vampire, torrents of blood shoot up, and it's a great sequence overall. It's a funny sequence. Cannot recommend that sequence enough. It's a very great scene. In fact, it was actually kind of done without Steven Weber's knowledge, so he didn't realize what was going to happen, and that's where the great line that Weber gets at the end when Mel Brooks says, "She's not quite dead yet." Steven Weber stops and says, "She's dead enough." It's a great scene. I love the scene. My favorite scene in the movie. That's reason number 5 why I love Dracula Dead and Loving It. So, covering it real quick again. Number 1 reason, I love seeing Leslie Nielsen and Mel Brooks in their only film collaboration together. Truly, I wish they had more time to work together. Number 2, the way it dives into the 30s film, the Hammer films, the 90s films, the novel, all fantastic. The jokes that they make are great. Number 3, Peter MacNicol as Renfield. Does not get enough comment as a great character actor that he is, and is still working to this day. Number 4, I love Mel Brooks' attention to detail in his directing when it comes to spoofing something that he loves. Reason number 5, the stake scene. Excellent scene. I love it so much. So those are my 5 reasons why I love Dracula Dead and Loving It. Now, for all you kiddos out there, I'm going to have 60 seconds to talk as many ridiculous fun facts as I can. So stay tuned with me because I'm about to do that right now. All right, let me just get quick. All right, then. You guys ready? All right, 3, 2, 1. So, Rudy DeLuca, who co-wrote the screenplay with Mel Brooks, actually played Vinny in Spaceballs. He's the one who goes, "Pizza the Hut wants to talk to you." He's the robotic guy. Roger Ebert actually originally called Leslie Nielsen the Laurence Olivier of spoofs, which I could not agree with more. He's a fantastic spoof player, and he's the greatest in the world. All right, number 3. Steven Weber is actually known for playing 3 different Stephen King characters. He was in the Shining miniseries. He was also in Desperation. He was in an episode of Nightmares and Dreamscapes, which was an anthology series that played in the mid-2000s. Lizette Anthony appeared in 3 Bryan Adams music videos. She was the one who played Lucy in the film earlier before. I love Lizette Anthony. I had a big crush on her back in the 90s. She's in 3 different Bryan Adams videos. Harvey Korman worked with Mel Brooks 4 different times, and there was a large point in time when they did not work together very much. It was great to see them come back together for this film in older years. All right, Anne Bancroft, who's actually the wife of Mel Brooks, they appeared together in To Be or Not to Be and several other different projects together. She actually appears early on in the film as the gypsy woman who's like, do not go to the castle. That's Mel Brooks' actual wife. I just realized that just watching the film recently myself. Didn't notice it before. That's it. All right, we got our 60 seconds. That's it. I got a few more on here. I'm going to spare you that. So thanks, guys, for joining me today. I hope you get a chance to check out the film if you haven't seen it before. If you did, let me know what you thought about it. Did you think I'm just crazy and this movie's terrible and there's no reason I should love it? Or did you find something that you actually liked about it? Is it a film you feel like revisiting? Comment below, let me know. There's lots of comment space down there, so feel free to add your thoughts. If you like the video, give us a like. If you want to see more of our content, give us a subscribe. If you're interested in supporting the channel, got my link to the Patreon right down there for Kyle and Nick on Film. You can help support the channel and keep us going, keep the lights on here. And even if you're one of our lower tier people, you can actually help kind of influence different episodes. We have some mailbag talking points that we'd like to get involved with. Or also you can sometimes even pick an episode and we'll actually watch a movie based on your recommendation and talk about it. So join us for that too. Take a look at that Patreon, check it out, even if you're not sure if you want to join or not. See what we have to offer. If you can't, let's say, right now we're in a time where like some people are a little bit tighter on film or money, so you got to be able to decide what you want to spend your money on. I understand that. If you can't support the channel in that way, just please make sure that you take the opportunity to share the video online. Let us know what your thoughts are about it too, and get the word out there more. We just appreciate all the help when it comes to that. So thanks again, guys, for joining us. My name is Kyle Goethe. You can find all my film reviews at goatfilmreviews.com. Or you can check me out every single week here with Kyle and Nick on Film, where I'm doing videos. Eventually, we're going to get together, and you'll actually see Nick Plotachuk with me as well, and we'll be doing some more video work for you coming soon. But we got to get through this crisis together. So thanks again for joining us, guys. Till next time, we'll see you later.